Suffering is a big thing, something we all experience throughout the course of our lives. Some of us more than others, but make no mistake, suffering is coming your way regardless of who invites it in and who casually wanders through life oblivious to its inevitability. It's no surprise then that a lot of you tend to blame God for such a thing. The interesting point here though is that while you fervently abide in the belief that God isn't there, you attribute suffering to him. You say things like, if there's a God, why do children die of disease? Which is a perfectly valid question, and one that certainly needs unpacking for those willing to listen and accept the nature of a fallen creation through sin. We hear the word sin, and for some reason there's a knee-jerk response to instantly dismiss the following statements or ideas, as if the word alone is enough to make up your mind about the validity of the notion. So ask yourself, why do you disagree with the idea that we're in a sinful existence? Is it because, as an atheist, there is no God, and therefore no reason for sin to even exist, as it is by nature the direct opposition to God? Maybe you're opposed to it because you quite like the idea of being governed only by yourself and accountable to nobody else, affording you the option to do whatever you like, whenever you like to, and to whoever you like to. Or just maybe, and stay with me here, you know there's a God of the universe who created you for his will and his eternal kingdom, and he opposes sinful nature, and it's a tall order to steer clear of all that lot, and you don't like it. Either way, the argument that sin isn't real because God isn't real is nonsense. You'd have to come up with a ridiculously apparent and realistic alternative explanation to the nature of morality. And let me just stop you before you make a fool of yourself. You can't. Morality has been woven into the fabric of your being by the creator of the universe, who is a personal agent who loves and cares for you. And I come to this conclusion based on evidence. My morality, and yours also, is a direct result of the compassion, love and grace given to us by God. We're made in his image, and by extension, feel things, view things, and are morally obligated to do things that align with him. I step on a bug as a child because I want to, and nothing else. It didn't make a threatening gesture which made me feel uncomfortable enough that self-defense was in order. Neither did it have the capacity to be any significant threat to my immediate well-being. So it makes perfect sense that I crush it to the ground with my foot, doesn't it? Absolutely not. The reason for the act is because sin exists in the world we happen to live in, and we bend to its will as a result of our distance from God since the fall of creation, when Adam and Eve, yes, the Adam and Eve you're convinced weren't real, fell to the temptation offered to them by the enemy of mankind, the spirit of malevolence and violence that embodies each and every one of us if we don't seek God through Christ. Sin is here, and my belief in it is of no consequence, yours either. I stepped on that bug, not because it harmed, was capable of harming, or it carried disease or anything like that. I squashed it because I was bigger than it, superior to it, and had the capacity to inflict damage, pain, and suffering upon it. I felt good as its exoskeleton crunched underneath my shoe, giving me a false sense of magnitude and presence in my otherwise dull and pathetic existence. Meandering from one place to the next, without aim, cause, or direction. This attitude toward myself and the world more broadly was the sin of the flesh, allowing me to rationalize and excuse my terrible behavior, which, left unchecked and unquestioned by peers and the older generations before me, would inevitably spiral out of control and descend into chaos and hedonism. But there's a problem with all this. Even with the sense of superiority and control over the lesser being, this puny little bug in this case, I knew that to do it was wrong. How? Certainly not because my mum told me to, because she'd squish them faster than me if she saw one, same with spiders, houseflies and such. And it wasn't because you just know these things are wrong either. While it's true that we know, the argument that you just know is ridiculous. It's childish, petulant, and so misinformed it beggars belief. We know things are wrong because we have it written on our hearts by God from the very beginning before He created us all in His image. God had the will to ensure that you and I were of a perfect moral decency and what He Himself calls righteousness. The proof of this is seen in babies when they're developing further into toddlers. They might clamber their way over to the car keys, and without prior information that to take them is wrong, you'll see them look around, watching for anybody who's keeping their eye on whether or not they take them off the coffee table and either hide them somewhere or simply lob them in the toilet, which seems to be the more favourable approach to car keys with kids. The point is, nobody has told this child that he shouldn't be taking the keys. He just instinctively knows. There's the written morality given us by God. The will to take them and hide them or throw them away is the sinful desires. And before you get on the train of accusing me of accusing babies of being sinners and that they're going to hell and whatnot, make no mistake, babies are born into sin. Creation is plagued by it. It's our jobs as parents to guide them as we watch them in their sinful nature time and time again, that they learn to observe their behaviour and correct it, that they might well grow into an individual with the capacity to ask the right questions and seek God first. And if you'd like to turn it into a personal attack, then by all means, yes, I mean your baby too, as well as mine. We suffer with this. We suffer with so many things. We're tempted daily by the things and patterns of the world that we know to be in opposition with what is morally right. It's inside and within us, because the God who made the universe and all it contains made you and I also. Sinful desires and temptations are here as a result of free will, also given to us by a loving and devoted Father, as we do with our own children, in His image, following His guidance and His example. You sin because you want to. The enemy just presents you with the opportunity to find things appealing enough that you stray away from your sensibilities just long enough to partake. And at that moment, this spirit of chaos and malevolence switches teams and becomes your accuser. This is why the guilt immediately sets in. And stop lying to yourself, cracking on like you're a nutcase who feels no guilt and self-pity and sorrow, like you're the only one alive who can withstand feeling bad as a consequence of terrible actions. You're fooling nobody. Me neither. My message to you is, since sin is a part of your day-to-day, you can make the necessary steps required to live in accordance with God and His perfect will. And don't get me wrong, you'll fail miserably at it, as will I. But the point is to be aiming upwards and acting within a fallen creation as if the God who breathed life into said creation exists. We're called to turn from those things we know to be wrong and walk a path of truth. To some of you this might look like putting the bottle down and living in sobriety, as it does for myself. To others it might be that they quit smoking, which, in the interest of full disclosure, is of particular difficulty for me at this time. Although with prayer and trust in the God of the universe, I have every faith in His ability to ensure that I'll be smoke-free in the future. Some of you might gossip, fabricate the truth for personal gain. You might overeat, maybe you're addicted to other drugs. The list goes on and on. But the point is that we forego the self-pity and trust the reason behind the self-loathing and guilt we feel, that it's written on our heart by God that we live in righteousness. Please don't take this as a sermon of any kind. I'm in no position to judge anybody in terms of the righteousness they walk in. I'm a flawed individual, on more than one front, as you are. But if we put our faith in God, these things will fall away and will be renewed in His name and for His sake. I've seen it happen in many people, and I've witnessed His grace myself, as I detailed in the first film entitled Why God is the Answer, the first in the series. I'm making this series of films because I want you to experience God's goodness for yourselves and see that I only talk of sin and the desires of its kind because the recognition and acknowledgement of it is a necessary step in making the right choices going forward. It's not the doom and gloom and condemnation it's often tied to. Instead, it's rather an invitation to realise what we're doing wrong in the sight of God and turn away from it, voluntarily. Because the grace and perfect goodness of the God of the universe, who put everything in its place that you and I could enjoy the ride we call life, and find the God who is ever present and just waiting for you to say, "Have your way with me, God, not my will, but yours, in the name of Jesus Christ." The man who existed, make no mistake about that, and was God incarnate, manifest in the flesh, and who suffered and died by himself on the cross at Golgotha, to absolve you and I of our transgressions against the perfect and holy God, who will judge every one of us at the appointed time. And without Jesus' sacrifice for us, we'd be left found wanting and consequently damned to eternal suffering and torment. Not my words, read it for yourself. And don't be naive. The necessity for a place reserved for those unwilling to adjust, accept forgiveness and repent is of no small matter. Likewise, the necessity for a perfect, righteous and holy judge is paramount in order that the hierarchy of goodness is established for us to exist within, or without. This is a bucket load to take in, I know that, especially if you've not heard anything even close to this before, so you'd be forgiven for thinking that you need to take a minute to reflect and absorb it all. But I urge you, as I urge myself, to ask for God's intervention in your situation, and show His works in you and through you, that you might submit to His will, and begin a walk in righteousness, and in so doing, be redeemed by the blood of Christ on that cross. Suffering is brought upon us by ourselves. I'm not saying babies in the womb, children born disfigured and diseased, or any other of the so-called innocence of the world. I'm not saying they deserve to experience pain. Rather, I'm saying pain is a consequence of the human condition of this sinful nature brought upon us by our ancestors' transgressions. And that I wouldn't be so sure that if placed in the garden, in Eden at the beginning, you wouldn't have succumbed to the temptation. Suffering is horrible. It's scary. It's the worst thing we experience. The loss of a loved one, failures, insecurities, inferiorities, and everything we live through as a result of sin entering creation. But there's a God who separated Himself from us that we wouldn't burn in the presence of His holiness, who sent His only begotten Son to atone for us all, and executed the only sufficient sacrifice that we could know Him and live